The nurse asked if I was sure I wanted to sign the DNR while my son still hadn't visited. 21 days in cardiac intensive care, and Michael never showed up, not even when they called to say I might not make it through the night. My name is Margaret Wilson, 72, retired English teacher of 34 years. My son holds my power of attorney, manages my investments, controls my medical decisions, and is the sole beneficiary of my estate. The same son who couldn't spare a single hour to see his dying mother. Perhaps he's caught in traffic, Dr. Sharma suggested on day 5, his eyes carefully avoiding mine. Maybe tomorrow, Nurse Keisha offered on day 12, her tone carrying that special pity reserved for the abandoned. I stopped making excuses for him by day 15, just nodded silently when the hospital chaplain asked if there was anyone else he should call. On day 19, my neighbor Walter brought me flowers. He'd known me for exactly 8 months. I would have come sooner, he apologized, but I just found out yesterday. That night, watching the heart monitor's steady rhythm, something crystallized inside me. Not anger or bitterness, something colder, clearer, more resolved. I pressed the call button. I need a notary, I told the night nurse, and my attorney's phone number from my personal effects. Her eyes widened slightly. Now? It's after midnight. Now, I confirmed, while I'm still breathing to sign the papers. Michael was barely 30 when I put up my house as collateral for his first restaurant. It's just a formality, Mom, he assured me. The business plan is bulletproof. That restaurant lasted 8 months before creditors came calling. I paid $143,000 to keep my home, wiping out half my retirement savings. When I mentioned this at my 72nd birthday dinner last year, Michael changed the subject. My hospital room overlooked the parking lot. Every afternoon I watched a middle-aged woman hurry from her car, always carrying fresh flowers or books. My roommate Walter, 78, pancreatic cancer, perpetually grumpy, would perk up at precisely 4:15 when she arrived. My daughter Jennifer, he explained on day 3 of my stay. Haven't spoken to her in 7 years until this happened. It was difficult after her mother died. But she comes every day, I said, watching his weathered face soften as he checked his watch. Every damn day, he confirmed, pride mixing with regret, even though I don't deserve it. I thought about Michael's expensive college education, the private university that drained my teacher's pension, the 3 business loans I'd co-signed, the down payment on his house in Brookhaven, the neighborhood I could never afford to live in myself, the legal fees when his first marriage collapsed after just 2 years. When Robert, my husband, died 9 years ago, Michael showed up for the funeral 3 hours late, left before the reception ended. Client emergency, Mom. You understand. I did understand, because I'd always understood. That's what mothers do. Family is complicated, Walter said one night after Jennifer had left. My boys haven't called once since I got sick. Jennifer was always the responsible one, like you, I suspect. I laughed bitterly. I taught high school English for 43 years. Responsibility was practically my religion. Tell me about your son, Walter prompted. I hesitated. Michael has potential, always has. Just need the right opportunity. Walter's eyebrows rose. How many right opportunities has he had? The question stung because I knew the answer. 6 major financial bailouts since he'd turned 25. Countless smaller emergencies. The $24,000 tax lien is paid off just last Christmas. Temporary cash flow issues, he'd called it. Michael gave me power of attorney after Robert died, I said quietly. He manages everything, investments, property, medical decisions. He's very capable with money. Walter snorted. Is he? Or is he very capable with your money? The truth of those words settled over me like hospital sheets, thin but suffocating. That evening, Nurse Keisha helped me shower. Your son called, she mentioned casually. Wanted to know if you'd signed the insurance paperwork for the new policy. What new policy? I asked. She shrugged. Don't know the details. Said it was important. Something about transferring assets. Another memory surfaced. Michael at my kitchen table 3 months ago, sliding papers across for my signature. Just updating your estate planning, Mom. Making sure everything's protected. I'd signed without reading, trusting him completely. On day 17, Walter's daughter brought cookies for the nurse's station and sat between our beds knitting while her father slept. Why do you come every day? I finally asked. After 7 years of silence, Jennifer's hands stilled. Because regret is a terrible companion in grief, she said simply. And because nobody should die alone, especially not my stubborn old dad. I thought about Michael, his handsome face, his charismatic smile, his endless promises, his absence during my darkest hours, the mounting evidence of his true priorities, the mysterious insurance policy, the estate planning I couldn't recall authorizing. Walter was being discharged the next day, headed for hospice care at Jennifer's home. She's insisting, he told me, disbelief in his voice. Rearranged her whole house, took family leave from work. I pictured Michael's sprawling 5-bedroom house, the guest room he'd converted to a home theatre last year. The thought of asking to recuperate there seemed suddenly humiliating. That night, I drafted a text message to my son. Fighting to stay alive. Could use your support. My finger hovered over the send button for several minutes before I deleted it. Some tests didn't need to be administered. I already knew the results. The discharge papers listed my condition as stable, a clinical term that failed to capture the hollowness in my chest that had nothing to do with my cardiac event. Dr. Sharma suggested I stay with family during recovery. I smiled politely and said I had arrangements in place. My first stop wasn't home but the offices of Harrington and Associates, the law firm that had handled Robert's estate 9 years earlier. I'd called ahead from the hospital, requesting a meeting with senior partner David Harrington. Urgent personal matter was all I said. The receptionist put me down for 2 p.m. the day after my discharge. Margaret, you should be resting, David said, rising from behind his mahogany desk. His hair had gone completely silver since I'd last seen him. I've been in bed for 3 weeks, I replied. Enough rest. David nodded to his assistant Rebecca, according to her nameplate a woman perhaps 35 with attentive eyes and a quiet efficiency. Could you bring Mrs. Wilson some water? And those files I requested? Once she left, I placed my hospital bracelet on his desk. I need to revoke a power of attorney. Today. David's expression shifted from concern to professional interest. Michael's? Yes. May I ask why? 3 weeks in cardiac intensive care. They called him 5 times. He never came. David's mouth tightened. I see. Rebecca returned with a glass of water and a manila folder. As she set them down, she glanced at my hospital bracelet, then at me with something I couldn't quite identify in her eyes. Rebecca, David said, Mrs. Wilson will need the full package for financial separation and power of attorney revocation, and pull the trust documents from Robert's estate. Right away, she said, disappearing again. What else? David asked once we were alone. I want to see all my accounts, everything Michael has access to, and I want my house retitled solely in my name. While David typed notes, I sipped my water. My hands trembled slightly, a side effect of my new medication, I told myself. Not fear, not grief. Rebecca returned with more files. As she organized them on the conference table, she spoke without looking up. My father had a stroke last year. My brother holds his power of attorney. He used it to remortgage Dad's house, the house that was supposed to come to me and buy himself a boat. Our eyes met briefly. Understanding passed between us. Rebecca will help you review all the financial records, David said. She's exceptionally thorough. During the next 2 hours, Rebecca methodically traced through 9 years of financial documentation, bank statements, investment accounts, property records, insurance policies. The story they told made my surgical scar ache. "Here," she said, pointing to a series of transfers dating back 18 months. $4,000 from your main account to an unknown account at First Federal. Monthly, like clockwork. "I never authorized that," I said. "And here," she continued, "a refinance application on your home from 6 months ago. It wasn't completed, but it was initiated." "Without my knowledge?" She nodded, placing a sticky note on that page. "And your investment portfolio shows unusual trading activity, high-risk options, cryptocurrency purchases." "Michael told me he was rebalancing for retirement planning," I said, remembering his confident smile as he'd explained financial terms I pretended to understand. "These aren't retirement strategies," Rebecca said flatly. "This is gambling with your money." By the 3rd hour, we had filled a legal pad with discrepancies. The investment account that should have held over $300,000 now showed just under $120,000. The vacation property in Michigan that Robert and I had purchased 30 years ago had been used as collateral for a business loan I'd never heard of. "Is this criminal?" I asked David when he returned. "Some of it might be," he said carefully, "but proving it would mean pressing charges against your son." My throat tightened. What are my options? Stop the bleeding immediately. Revoke all authorizations. Change accounts. Secure what's left. I stared at the papers, the numerical record of betrayal. "Do it, all of it." Rebecca brought more documents. Revocation forms, new account applications, property transfer documents. I signed each one with a steadier hand than I expected. "There's one more thing," Rebecca said hesitantly. "I checked his social media while you were reviewing the trust documents." She turned her tablet toward me. There was Michael tanned and grinning on a boat. The post was dated 1 week earlier, the day Dr. Sharma had called him about my worsening condition. "Birthday celebration in Cabo with the crew. Blessed da living my beast life." The caption swam before my eyes. "I'm sorry," Rebecca whispered. Something crystallized inside me then, the same cold clarity I'd felt in the hospital while staring at the empty chair. "Don't be," I said. "This makes everything much simpler." By closing time, I had signed 37 documents. New accounts established, old ones frozen. Power of attorney transferred to a professional fiduciary service David recommended. My house is secured. My will is revised. In the parking lot, Rebecca caught up with me. "Mrs. Wilson, this fell out of your folder." She handed me a photograph Robert and me on our 30th anniversary. "Also, She hesitated. "I'd like to check on you next week, to see how you're doing with all this." I studied her face, searching for pity. Found none, just recognition, the look of someone who'd walked a similar path. "I'd appreciate that," I said. "And Rebecca, thank you for being thorough." She nodded. "People show you who they are through paper trails. You just have to know how to read them. Recovery is a harsh teacher." My heart would flutter unexpectedly, leaving me breathless and frightened. Simple tasks like climbing stairs became monumental achievements. But the betrayal that was a different kind of pain, one the medication couldn't touch. My first week home, I found another transaction. $12,000 moved from my emergency fund to an account in Michael's name just 3 days after my heart attack. While I was unconscious, tubes down my throat, my son was transferring my money. The timestamp showed 11:42 p.m., when visiting hours would have been long over. "Your blood pressure is still concerning," Dr. Sharma said during my follow-up appointment. "Are you taking your medication properly?" "Yes," I lied. The truth was I'd forgotten twice, sitting in my living room staring at old photographs. "And how is your home support situation?" he asked carefully. I straightened my spine. I've hired a part-time aide, 3 days a week. What I didn't tell him was that paying Rebecca from the law firm's sister to help me had nearly depleted my checking account. After Michael's withdrawals, I was living on financial fumes until my pension situation stabilized. And I'm joining a cardiac rehabilitation program, I added. At the community center on Maple Street. The community center wasn't my idea. It was Rebecca's. My father's recovery turned around when he started volunteering at ours, she'd explained. The exercise equipment is free for seniors and you might find purpose. Purpose. Such a small word for what I'd lost. On my third visit, struggling through prescribed exercises, I noticed him, a young man, perhaps 25, failing to hide his frustration while helping elderly participants with their stretches. His name tag read Elijah, Community Service. Court-ordered, explained Marjorie, a 78-year-old widow who knew everyone's business. Got caught tagging buildings. Judge gave him community service or jail. Something in his eyes reminded me of Michael at that age, intelligent but restless, searching for something he couldn't name. After my session, I found him struggling to fix a jammed printer in the office, swearing under his breath, hands shaking slightly. Problems? I asked. This piece of garbage won't... He stopped, remembering his audience. Sorry, it's jammed again. I set down my purse. May I? He stepped back, skeptical. I'd fixed enough school equipment in my teaching career to handle a basic paper jam. When the printer hummed back to life, Elijah looked genuinely surprised. How did you know how to do that? I was teaching before these things were invented. I watched them evolve. I smiled. Sometimes older models just need patience. The following week, he approached me during my exercise period. Mrs. Wilson, the computer's acting up again. Could you... It became our routine. I'd finish my rehabilitation exercises and Elijah would have some technical problem that mysteriously required my assistance. We both knew it was a pretense, but neither acknowledged it. One afternoon, he mentioned dropping out of community college. Waste of money, he said, adjusting the resistance on my stationary bike. My mum says I'll never finish anyway. What were you studying? Graphic design. I remembered Michael's abandoned architecture degree, the tuition payments I'd continued making long after he'd stopped attending classes. I taught for 43 years, I said instead. I've seen many students who needed time to find their path. Elijah snorted. My path's pretty clear. Dead-end jobs until I screw up enough for actual prison time. Or you could finish your degree. With what money? My mum works 2 jobs already. That night, I called David Harrington. I want to establish a small scholarship. Nothing extravagant, just community college tuition. For your grandchildren? He asked. No, I said firmly, for someone else. 2 weeks later, I handed Elijah an envelope after my session. An application, I explained, for a community scholarship. 1 student from this centre gets it each year. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. And you think that should be me? I think everyone deserves a second chance, I said, even those who've made mistakes. He took the envelope. What about your own kids? Wouldn't they be pissed about some stranger getting money? I met his gaze steadily. My son has taken enough from me. Something in my tone made him study my face. Sounds like there's a story there. There is, I admitted. Perhaps I'll tell you someday. As I was leaving, the centre director approached me. Whatever you said to Elijah, thank you. He's shown up early every day this week. My rehabilitation progressed. I joined a book club that met at the centre. Started volunteering at the reception desk 1 morning a week. My medication schedule became second nature. Sometimes I'd go entire days without thinking about Michael. The letters from collection agencies addressed to my son stopped coming after David sent cease and desist notices. The credit monitoring service showed no new accounts opened in my name. Slowly, my financial world stabilized like my heartbeat. 6 months after my heart attack, I hosted a small dinner party. Rebecca and her father, Walter and his daughter Jennifer, two women from my book club. Laughter filled my dining room for the first time in years. When the doorbell rang unexpectedly, I found Elijah standing awkwardly on my porch clutching a paper. "I got accepted," he said simply, "for the spring semester." I smiled. "That's wonderful news." "The scholarship covered everything." He hesitated. "I just wanted to say, no one's ever believed in me before." As we stood in my doorway, I realized something profound had shifted inside me. The raw wound of Michael's betrayal had begun to heal, not because the pain had diminished, but because new connections had grown around it like scar tissue, protective and strong. "Would you like to come in?" I asked. "There are some people I'd like you to meet." 8 months passed like a slow healing wound, still tender when touched, but no longer bleeding. My cardiologist had reduced my medications. The community centre had given me a small plaque for Volunteer of the Quarter. Rebecca and I had lunch every Tuesday. Walter had passed peacefully in hospice care with Jennifer holding his hand. Life had found a new rhythm. Then on a Wednesday morning in January, my doorbell rang. Michael stood on my porch wearing an expensive coat and a practiced smile that faltered slightly when he saw me. "Mom," he said, leaning in for an awkward hug that I didn't fully return. "You look great." I studied his face thinner than I remembered, dark circles under his eyes, and nervousness in his movements that wasn't there before. "This is unexpected," I said, not inviting him in. "Can I come in? It's freezing out here." I stepped aside wordlessly. In my living room, he took in the change's new furniture, the wall I'd repainted, photographs of my new friends where family portraits once hung. "You've been busy," he said, still standing. "What brings you here, Michael?" I asked, remaining near the door. He rubbed his hands together, then produced a folder from his briefcase. "It's about Grandma's lake house. I've found a buyer willing to pay well above market. Great opportunity. Just need your signature since you're still on the deed." "The lake house isn't for sale," I said. His smile tightened. "Mom, it's been sitting empty for years. The maintenance alone, I was there last month with my book club. Rebecca drives me up twice a month now." Michael blinked, processing this information. "Rebecca?" "My friend." "My attorney's assistant, actually." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Mom, this offer is exceptional. $480,000 cash. No contingencies." I didn't respond immediately, studying his face, the slight tick near his left eye, the way he couldn't quite meet my gaze. Something wasn't right. "Why the rush?" I asked. "Real estate market hot. They want to close in 15 days? I gestured to the couch. "Sit down, Michael." He lowered himself onto the edge of the cushion, still clutching the folder. "How's Karen?" I asked, referring to his wife of 6 years. A flash of something pain? Anger crossed his face. "We're taking some time apart." "I'm sorry to hear that." "These things happen," he said dismissively. "About the lake house." 8 months, I interrupted. "What?" 8 months since my heart attack. 21 days in the hospital. No visits, no calls after you learned I was stable. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Work was insane, Mom. The Singapore project. During my second week in the hospital," I continued as if he hadn't spoken, "Walter's daughter brought in fresh pajamas for him. She'd driven 3 hours each way every weekend for months, despite not speaking to him for 7 years before his diagnosis." Michael's jaw tightened. "I don't know who Walter is, but I'm here now. Because you need my signature." He sighed dramatically. "That's not fair. I've been meaning to visit, but things got complicated." "Complicated how?" Michael stood abruptly, pacing. "Can we not do this? The buyers are pressuring me. Ask for an answer." "You mean they're pressuring you?" "The broker called me yesterday." His head snapped up. "What?" Tim Hargrove from Century 21 wanted to confirm I was aware of the sale. Mentioned you were quite insistent about the timeline. Michael's face paled slightly. That's just standard procedure. He also mentioned you'd already received an earnest money deposit, $50,000. His hands clenched the folder tighter, a show of good faith from the buyers. Where is it, Michael? In escrow, of course, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. 2 days after Michael's unexpected visit, I met Jennifer for coffee. She'd stayed in touch after Walter's passing, our shared experiences creating a bond that transcended the circumstances of our meeting. So your son finally surfaced, she said, stirring her latte. Only because he needs something. Jennifer nodded knowingly. Walter always said people show their truest selves in a crisis. Your son failed that test. I sighed. There's more going on. He's desperate for money, but I don't know why. Have you asked him directly? He won't tell me. Says it's business opportunities. Jennifer hesitated. My brother had that same look once. Turned out he'd lost $40,000 gambling online, started with sports betting, escalated to online poker. The thought had never occurred to me. Michael, gambling. But it would explain the urgency, the desperation beneath his polished exterior. That afternoon I called Karen. We'd never been particularly close, but she answered on the second ring. Margaret, she said, sounding surprised, I've been meaning to call you. Is Michael gambling, Karen? A long silence followed. Then, how did you know? I didn't. Not until just now. Karen's voice cracked. It started last year, small bets at first, then larger ones to cover his losses. He took out a second mortgage without telling me, maxed out our credit cards. That's why I left, not because I stopped loving him, but because he refused help. How much does he owe? I asked. Last I knew, over $300,000. To banks, credit cards. She hesitated. And some people you don't want to owe money to. My heart ached, not from my condition, but from the revelation. My son wasn't just absent, he was drowning. After we hung up, I sat in my garden, thinking about the empty hospital chair, the lake house Michael was desperate to sell, the earnest money that had likely already disappeared into someone else's pocket. The gambling explained so much, his increasing requests for investments over the years, the evasiveness about finances, the transparent lies. That evening, my doorbell rang again. Michael stood there, eyes red-rimmed, the confident facade crumbling. Mom, he said, voice breaking, I'm in trouble. Mom, I'm in trouble. Michael stood in my doorway, his expensive coat wrinkled, his confident facade crumbling. For a moment I saw the little boy who would run to me with scraped knees looking for comfort. That image dissolved quickly. I know about the gambling, Michael. The colour drained from his face. Karen told you. She did. $300,000 in debt, to banks, credit cards, and people who don't send collection notices. He stepped inside uninvited, collapsing onto my sofa. They've threatened me, Mom. Give me a deadline. That's why I need the lake house money. I sat across from him, hands folded in my lap. When did it start? 3 years ago. Sports betting at first, then poker, blackjack. He rubbed his face. I kept thinking the next bet would turn it all around. And my heart attack? He couldn't meet my eyes. I was at a high-stakes game in Vegas when the hospital called. The words hung between us, heavier than all the medical equipment that had kept me alive during those 21 days. After they called the third time, he continued, I told myself I'd fly back once I won enough to cover what I owed. Then I lost another $40,000 that night. I nodded, absorbing this truth without surprise. And the money you took from my accounts while I was hospitalized. His shoulders slumped. I needed it for a payment. They were threatening to break my legs. So, instead of facing your problems, you stole from your unconscious mother. I was going to pay it back. His voice cracked. The lake house sale would have covered everything. You'd never have known. Except I did find out because I woke up. The silence stretched between us, 30 years of love and disappointment compressed into a few unbearable seconds. I've made some changes, Michael. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. The same expression he'd had when asking for money for his third failed business venture. I've revoked your power of attorney, changed my will, secure my assets in a trust you can't access. What? The word came out strangled. I continued, my voice calm. The lake house isn't being sold. It's been placed in a trust that specifically excludes you. You can't do that. I already have. The paperwork was finalized 4 months ago. Michael stood, anger flashing across his face. So you're just cutting me off? Your only son? After one mistake? 21 days, Michael. That wasn't one mistake. That was 21 consecutive days of choices, and it wasn't the first time you chose yourself over everything else. His hands clenched into fists, then relaxed. The fight drained from him as quickly as it had appeared. What am I supposed to do now? These people will hurt me. I reached for the folder on my coffee table. This is information for a gambling addiction treatment center in Minneapolis. They have a 6-month residential program. I can't afford... It's already arranged. The trust will pay for your treatment directly. Not a penny touches your hands. His eyes widened. You're still helping me? I'm helping you get treatment, not enabling your addiction. And after treatment, what then? That depends on you. The trust includes provisions for education, career training, even seed money for a legitimate business, after 2 years of proven sobriety, verified by the trustee. Who's the trustee? Rebecca. He blinked. Your friend from the law firm, not even family. She understands boundaries and consequences. Michael sank back into the sofa. And these people I owe? They won't wait for me to complete treatment. There's a separate provision for that. The trustee can negotiate settlements directly with creditors, with proper documentation, not through you. You've thought of everything, he said bitterly. I had 21 days in a hospital bed with nothing but time to think. He stared at the floor for a long moment. Do you hate me? The question caught me off guard. No, Michael, I don't hate you. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. 2 days later, I drove Michael to the treatment center. We spoke little during the 3-hour drive. At the entrance, he hesitated. I'm sorry, Mom, about everything. I know. Will you visit during family weekends? I thought about the empty chair beside my hospital bed. If you do the work, I'll be there. But this is your last chance with me. He nodded, understanding the boundary. 6 months later, I sat in my garden with Elijah, who'd just completed his associate's degree. Rebecca joined us for lunch, bringing Walter's daughter Jennifer, who'd become a dear friend. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael's counselor. 90 days sober today. Making progress in the financial responsibility group. I showed it to my friends, my chosen family who'd appeared when I needed them most. Will you give him another chance? Elijah asked. I looked at the flourishing garden I'd planted during my recovery-resilient perennials that had survived both frost and drought. Second chances are earned, I said, not given, but I'm leaving room for that possibility.